Carl Scott was the defensive passing game coordinator that groomed Tyreek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon to two of the NFL's top DBs. The kid Witherspoon had a phenomenal rookie season. Thought he was sensational in his rookie season too. I think Pete Carroll had a really good staff up there on defense. And remember, I'm personally, now that you're seeing all these guys being released, Dan Quinn, in my opinion, is the fit up there. They're probably going to bring brand new guys into the building. And Dan Quinn's going to probably bring a lot of his guys potentially from Dallas up there. But when you're seeing all these Seattle hires, a lot of those guys were under Vic Fangio, especially in Chicago with those guys. But this just tells you, too, Tracy Rocker could be fired. We don't know that yet. But a guy who obviously is plugged in. And we're so happy to hear that there's a great progress coming up. And by the way, before we get Derrick Gunn in, Tone, do we have that GoFundMe page at the top here? We really appreciate him doing this for us. You know, one thing I learned about him is that he's a great family man. He's a man of God. And when you have those first two things in your life, everything else is not really important to you, because everything else falls in line after that. Because when you're a family man and you're a man of God, again, those are two things you can always live your life with. And with that being said, we bring our friend Derrick Gunn in. And my friend, I hope that you're doing well. And I hope the family's well. And I hope the damn grilling's going well. I'm barred from grilling. I watch you on all of your social media things. How are you, my friend? And how is Trish?
Doing great, my man. And she is doing so much better compared to just a month ago. She is stronger. She has a spirit that just won't quit. She's getting stronger in areas she needs to get stronger in. I thank you for putting that up there, by the way. I much appreciate it.
Of course.
We've had so many family and friends jump in, man, and just help. And it's been tremendous. God is good, man. You know, it could have been a whole lot worse than what it is. And things are looking up. It's just a matter of time. You know, patience is a virtue. You just have to be patient. We've seen so much progress from December to January, and early January to now. And, you know, she's working with physical therapists, occupational therapists, and we're starting to see that left side get stronger. So, yeah, you know, I can't complain, man. You know, and if you complain, who's going to listen anyway? Everybody has their own problems, right? So, you know, in my family, we don't complain. We just get stronger and we get more focused. And that's what my kids have jumped in and have been tremendous help. So many friends have jumped in, been tremendous help. That's all I can do. That's all I can ask for, man.
That's right. I mean, adversity creates strength. Not, you know, and I've always said that to people.
Amen.
You know, front runners go nowhere. People with adversity in life, those are the people I want in my boat. So,
yeah,
God bless you. All right. You know, Derrick, I haven't talked to you about the whole circus of the last 3 weeks, especially the ending of the season, before we get into the coordinators. Your takeaway on what you've been witnessing with that Eagle team. Now, I caught you on the postgame show a couple times, and you went knee deep in it, and you got in someone's ass on it. But just your overall take on where you were and where you are today on the Eagles going forward.
You know, social media creates such a buzz more so than ever before when it comes to hiring coaches and bringing in players and things like that. And I'm a wait and see person because, as you know, you played the game at a high level in college and in the pros. You know, just because you fit in one system doesn't necessarily mean you fit in another system. And, you know, people got on me a little bit when they brought in Byard and when they brought in Roby. And I said, that's not going to fix the Eagles' problems on the back end. And sure enough, they were not the solution. Anytime you hire a first-year defensive coordinator like a Deshaun Side, yes, he had a brief stint in Chicago. There are a lot of expectations and trepidations you have to worry about. It didn't work. The offense with Brian Johnson, who is a bright offensive mind, and I expect him to have many more opportunities to do a lot of things. It did not work here, even though he was in this system. You know, Dan, there are coaches that are meant to be coordinators. There are coaches that are meant to be position coaches, and there are position coaches and coordinators that are meant to be head coaches. And maybe Desai and Brian Johnson are just not meant to be certain types of coaches within certain structures. Who knows? Maybe they'll prove us wrong. I've said this on a number of platforms in a recent week. I will give the Eagles credit for one thing. They saw on both sides of the football what was happening. And even though this Eagles offense finished in the top 10 in a number of categories, it was still a jagged offense compared to what we saw in 2022. So the brain trust got behind closed doors and they said, this didn't work. So we see time and time again, Dan, where things go bad for first-year opportunists, and the organization will bring them back a second year and run it all over again. It doesn't get any better. In this case, Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman said, we got to move in a different direction. So they did that. They go out and get Vic Fangio. They go out and get Kellen Moore. Here's the thing that I like about Vic Fangio. I like his demeanor. He's like that John Wayne True Grit type demeanor. So he's going to come in here and he's going to have his opinion, and he's not just going to kowtow to the organization. Kellen Moore has had success in Dallas and with the Chargers. Here's what I don't like. I don't want to see another Jonathan Gannon, Sean Desai defense, which I do believe a Vic Fangio type defense is going to be, a bend but don't break defense. I want to see an attacking defense like San Francisco, like Detroit, like Baltimore, like Kansas City. Put pressure on the quarterback, make them make decisions before they want to make decisions. Now, Fangio down in Miami did set the franchise record for quarterback sacks in the season at 56. But he was let go after 1 year. See, that worries me. Why? He's well respected around the league. Why is he gone after 1 year? To me, that's a red flag. Kellen Moore is going to come in here with fresh ideas. Even if he runs the Nick Sirianni offense, he's going to come in here and he's going to put his own niche on his offense. But here's the negative. It's a pass-first offense, run-second offense. The Eagles want to run the football more. Howie and Jeffrey want to run the football more. They want more of a balance. So I understand why people are excited that they're moving forward and moving away from what didn't work. But I will say that I say this all the time, proceed with caution. And I'm not going to get excited now. I'm not going to get excited at OTs. You know how reporters like to jack up stuff in OTs and training camp. So-and-so called a triple somersault, 95-yard touch. Hey, man, it's in training camp. It's a controlled environment, okay? I won't get excited and I won't pass judgment until I see them hit the ground running next September when the games count for real.
D. Gunn, I'm going to give you kind of a profile of what folks told me about both Moore and Vic, and tell me if you think both these men are compatible with what they're going to do. And as you said, I mean, Kellen Moore's been a coordinator 5 years, and I'm trying to figure out what quarterback he developed. I mean, when Kellen Moore leaves Dallas, Mike McCarthy takes Dak and he plays his best ball and he goes to Los Angeles. Herbert plays his worst ball, and he's a guy that believes in a lot of motion, which is good. He believes in quarterbacks under center, which is going to take some of that blitzing away. He was the most blitzed quarterback in the NFL, and he was a quarterback that threw the highest high percentage turnover play passes in the league. That's also going to help. But he's a pre-snap motion guy, and he gets lost and forgets the run game. Gee, D-Gun, that sounds to me like Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni's offense, that they get so pass happy, they get away from the run game. Now, are you hiring Kellen Moore to have Jalen Hurts in the image of what you want him to be? Or are you hiring a coordinator to fit Jalen Hurts' skill set?
It better be the latter in terms of getting a coordinator to fit Jalen Hurts' skill set and to develop him. You don't want to change the overall makeup of a Jalen Hurts.
Who's he coached, though, as a dual threat guy, D-Gun?
I understand that. Dak was not that dual threat guy. Herbert is not that dual threat guy. But I think Kellen is smart enough to come in here and with eyes wide open and understand the success he had. Remember down in Dallas, you know, his offense was the number one offense for a year or two down there. I mean, it was like pinball offense down there. Didn't work out for him with the Chargers. I hope he sits back and analyzes himself and realizes that with this offensive skill set, with this Nick Sirianni offense, he can take this offense to another level, similar to what we saw in 2022. But I will say this, Dan, as well, and I said this all offseason. When you have an entire offseason as a defensive staff and a defensive coordinator to look at the better offenses in the league and to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of an offense, let's see what it looks like a year later. And sure enough, defenses started figuring out what Jalen Hurts and his offense wanted to do. And I think one of the biggest travesties in his offense, as I tweeted out right after that Dallas game down in Dallas, when they got smacked in Dallas, as the players told me, look at how quick Dak gets that bleeping ball out of his hands. Our passing routes take too long to develop. And sure enough, they never changed the concept in the passing game. They totally abandoned all the underneath routes. When it was 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, he's going for the home run ball down the sideline. Why? There's no need for that. Get the first down. You got receivers running crossing routes wide open in the middle of the field, waving their hands like they're waving in a plane on a runway. You completely miss them. Why? You've got to add those little tweaks back into your offense to make that offense that much more potent. Now, granted, they had a monster of a schedule, no question about it. They played better defenses, better personnel. But that offense never was consistent. Even when they were 10-1, it was never a consistent offense. They got a lot of breaks along the way to get 10-1. And then all of a sudden, Lady Luck turned her face on them the latter part of the season.
Here's the synopsis on Vic. The guy, by the way, the guy was at Milford Academy in Connecticut, and I was reminded by my high school coach, he had recruited me, and I can't believe this guy's been around this long at college and both the pro level here. But it's interesting when you hear what Dave Wannstedt and a lot of guys like Chuck Pagano say about him and his style of being a coordinator. He says, don't expect your blitz ratio to increase in what you guys did last year. It's going to be around the same. He believes in containing control. He's a guy that's a bend but don't break defensive guy. He tries to get teams to dink and dunk. Well, you have to have corners and backers to play that kind of balance. He believed in balance at both levels or all three levels, D-line, linebackers, and corners and safeties. I don't believe you have that on that side of the ball. You know, it's funny, D-Gun, all to me is that they hired a more experienced Jonathan Gannon here. I mean, it just looks to me, it's the same. I mean, with more experience. And I see some of the assistants they're going to bring in, like Clint from Seattle. It looks like Tracy's out potentially. So there's going to be a lot of experience here. But, I mean, it's just a more experienced Jonathan Gannon. They're staying with the same fundamental system and scheme.
Yeah.
So they basically thought this, right, Derrick? It wasn't personnel. Howie and Jeffrey and Nick are looking at it that this was a coaching issue, not a personnel issue, because you're basically staying with the same stuff.
If they take that approach, they're going to have the same problems in 2024. You have to identify, you need to get an upgraded linebacker. You're going to have to get an upgrade at cornerback. Now, I believe Darius Slay will be back in 24. James Bradbury, no. But I also believe that they do have some young, raw talent back there. I think Sidney Brown, once he hones his skills, is going to be a really good safety in the National Football League. I think Eli Ricks has potential. He made a lot of rookie mistakes. I think Keely Ringo has potential. Made mistakes, didn't get enough reps. I look at what Kansas City did in 2022, Dan. They had a bunch of kids playing on the back end of that defense. They had a solid core at front seven. They had a bunch of kids playing on the back end of that defense. Those kids made mistakes. They got burned. They had to learn communications better. By the time they got to the end of that season, they caught up with the rest of the defense. And this was a team that still found a way to win 14 out of 17 games that year. And oh, by the way, they go on and win the Super Bowl. I think these young players in the back end of this Eagles defense can step up and help this team significantly. Now, that's not to say they don't need to add more talent by way of free agency in the draft. But I do think nucleus is there. The big key is how much are they willing to invest in a linebacking play? You cannot say enough. Look at the 4 teams that were standing in the conference finals.
Phenomenal linebacker play.
Linebacking play across the board. Also, look at all 4 teams that were standing in the finals. What did they do well defensively? Put pressure on the quarterback, bring the odd man, keep the quarterback under duress. Jonathan Gannon's defense was not like that. Desai's defense not like that. A Vic Fangio defense is not like that. They want to keep everything in front of them. Well, guess what? The better offenses of the National Football League and dink and dunk you down. Patrick Mahomes has made it a living winning 2 Super Bowls and 2 MVPs.
Brady won 7 like that.
Brady won 7. When are you going to wake up and realize the key to today's football in terms of attacking an offense is to make that quarterback get off his spot, make him make decisions quicker than he wants to.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple.
Absolutely. Amen. Spot on, Derrick Gunn. Derrick Gunn, you're going to think probably that Big Sills has been hitting the head too much when I say this one to you here.
Well, I do. I'll go on record. I do believe.
I know you do anyway. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I know you do anyway, but follow me here on this. So let me get this right. Kansas City traded away Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
And in the last 2 years, they've taken that $20 million and that $40 million and all the draft choices they got from Miami and have completely retooled that defensive side of the football. Hey, they won that game, by the way, against Baltimore. They held Baltimore to 10 points.
Defense.
That defense with Spagnuolo has been sensational. And they're now going to their 2nd Super Bowl in a row without Tyreek Hill and a chance to win their 3rd.
Yep.
I mean, you're going to have, like you said, a lot of work to do. You look at A.J. Brown. Where are you going with him? I mean, I get it's Mahomes. Well, do you have the same confidence in Hurts that Kansas City obviously has in Mahomes to carry your football team? Because that side of the ball, with the cap hits, with the amount of cap room, you got a draft coming up in April, you're going to need assets, Derrick. Now, am I crazy to say this? You're going to have to make some hard decisions here on where you're going with trying to build that defense back up. You need 2 new young corners.
Yeah.
Okay, Sidney Brown, you're right, needs to let the game slow down. Kid, relax, have a drink, do something. Let the game slow down a little bit. Derrick Gunn, am I crazy to say that Reddick, Brown, you've got to get some high-quality picks. A couple first-rounders for AJ and a 3rd could go a long way in building that defense up.
Well, the market is going to force their decision on the AJ Devontae situation because Devontae's soon up for a big contract.
Yes, sir.
You're not going to have 2 $100 million wide receivers on your roster.
Nobody in the league does.
No. So who are you keeping? Who are you going to let go? And I would say, if push comes to shove, you know how he likes to identify players he wants to keep and like to get them on the contract earlier while the market is still favorable to the organization. It's going to be a big contract, but it's going to be a favorable contract to the organization, which means you're going to get Devontae under a nice fat contract. What are you going to do with AJ? And you're right. Maybe this offseason is the offseason to dangle him as trade bait to see what you can get back. You need draft capital. You need cap space to maneuver the way Howie likes to maneuver in the offseason. But you cannot set a roster early in the year and continue to try to pick players off late August, September. Robert Quinn did not work. Kevin Byard did not work. Bradley Roby did not work. Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph worked up until the latter part of the season, and then teams figured out how to attack them, especially Kansas City, in terms of running against them. You can't keep just picking guys sitting in the rocking chair at home waiting for a call. You got to get these guys in here now, March and April, and let them run the whole gamut of whatever side of the ball they're going to be on. Run the whole gamut of that offense, that defense to get acclimated. Stop getting these quick fixes. It just doesn't work in the long run.
Last question for you here. Now, this kind of coincides with what I just asked. You know, and I get it. This is hindsight. This is, Monday morning quarterback kind of stuff. I'm watching the 2022 draft, and I'm looking at those players like Kyle Hamilton, Trent McDuffie, George Garofalo, that kid, that edge rusher from Kansas City, and I'm thinking, you took Jordan Davis here. Do you trust Howie to retool that side of the ball? And how do you think he'll do when it comes to positions that he's not had success. He's never had success at a corner. He's never had success at linebacker. I mean, we get that he's done a nice job in the tackle position, in the D-line position. But really, Derrick, I mean, you can't name me a corner in 15 years that he's landed on, and he's drafted 37 of them.
Well, first of all, they have to identify the value of both Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham to this organization. Brandon Graham has openly said he wants to finish his career here. He wants to ride off into the sunset. The Eagles have the utmost respect for Brandon Graham, but Brandon Graham will be 36 in April. It is an extreme rarity for any defensive lineman to play 15, 16 years with the same organization. It just doesn't happen. But Brandon Graham is not about money. He's loyal to this organization. This organization is loyal to him. And I will say this, Brandon Graham still has some value as a situational player to this team and as a locker room leader to this team, which is huge for Howie and Jeffrey in terms of having those definitive locker room leaders. You can sign a Brandon Graham for almost dirt cheap and fit him well under the cap where he won't hurt your cap. Fletcher Cox is a bit different story. Even at 31, 32 years old, I don't see them paying Fletcher Cox another $10 million like they kept paying Jason Kelce 12, 14, 15 million to come back. Fletcher Cox is a valuable commodity to this Eagles defense, but he wasn't as valuable as Jason Kelce was to that side of the football. So do you let him go and clear up more cap space? Well, who are you going to bring in? Whether it's free agency or the draft. We all thought that the Eagles had a phenomenal draft in 23. Everybody's salivating over Jalen Carter. Started out like gangbusters, faded down the stretch. Jordan Davis, second year. Started out like gangbusters, faded down the stretch. What do you do now? They've got a lot of soul searching to do. Were these two the right guys to bring in here? Okay. Were they the right guys to bring in here for this organization? I do believe they both were, but I do believe you need to get some veteran presence around them. If you let Fletcher go, you got to get another vet in here. Yeah. You can't rely on just kids. Josh Sweat has got to get back to 2022. If you keep Hassan Reddick, that's not a bad thing to keep Hassan Reddick. Now, how valuable is Hassan Reddick to you, though? You know, he's a heck of an edge rusher. No question about that. You need those kind of players to put heat on the quarterback. But how valuable is he to you in terms of what you can get for him to keep rebuilding this? Because the offense, even without Jason Kelce, for the most part, is going to come back intact. If you're going to keep getting younger on the defensive side, as we saw, it took a while for the defense to catch up with the offense, and then all of a sudden they both disintegrated. Okay? If you're going to go with a bunch of kids are going to be way behind the 8 ball compared to that offense, so you're going to have an imbalanced team again, which is going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. Because as we saw, they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. And, oh, by the way, the ball in the NFL bounces funny ways. We saw that. You know, we saw that, didn't we? In yesterday's Kansas City game, ball, bounces off one guy's helmet. In the San Francisco game, Ayuk catches the ball off a defender's helmet. Hey, the ball bounces funny in the National Football League. You don't know. I don't know if this Eagles team is going to be an 11-12 win team in 2024. I do believe it's a team that can be good enough to get to the playoffs. I don't know if it's a team that's going to be good enough to win that division again.
Derrick, let me end it with this. Did you believe that Nick Sirianni should be brought back?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah. How many coaches in the National Football League start their head coaching career going to the playoffs 3 consecutive years? It's a rarity, number one. Number two, the players believe in Nick Sirianni. They like Sirianni. You go out and make a coaching change. Who's to say you won't get another Adam Gase in here, a Josh McDaniels, an Eberflus in Chicago in here that could totally disintegrate this thing. Be careful when you're always looking over the fence at somebody else's yard. Just because it might look greener than yours doesn't mean it's better than yours. Okay? I think Nick deserves one more chance to prove himself. I really do. With the right coaches around him, with the right compliments around him. And I believe that Fangio and Kellen Moore will compliment him well. I do. Because they're both proven commodities at what they do. Can they accompany him and make him look better to get back to where they were in 2022? We don't know that yet. We don't know. Only time will tell, and we won't know until we watch the 2024 season. I don't like these teams, like we see a lot of teams in the national football. Look at what Houston did. 2 years in a row, fired the head coaches after 1 year. They finally got it right with my guy, D'Amico Ryans. And look what D'Amico did in the first year. Brought in some of his guys from San Francisco. They had a phenomenal draft. They had 2 of the first 4 picks in the draft, phenomenal draft, and got them to the playoffs in his first year. Great learning experience for a young team that's on the rise. I don't want to see the Eagles be so quick to pull the trigger and succumb to pressure from the outside, the media, and the fan base. Nick Sirianni had a bad year. Wow, is that tough to say? Had a bad year. You got a team to the playoffs 3 years in a row. Had a bad year. Won 11 games. Had a bad year. Let's see what he can do now. The Eagles, as I said off the top of our conversation, admitted they made mistakes in putting coordinators and coaches in specific spots, and yet they were men enough to say, you know what? We got to tear this thing down and start it all over again. And that's what they're doing. So I say give Nick, with this new group of coordinators, a chance to see what they can do together. Here's the one drawback. Let's say Nick Sirianni's team goes 7-10, 8-9 this year. He gets fired. What happened to these coordinators? What happens to these coordinators you're bringing in? You're going to fire them after 1 year because you hire a new head coach. He's going to bring his own people in. So what do you do with these guys? So it's a damn if you do, damn if you don't type situation.
Absolutely. Derrick, thank you so much for your valuable time. I know, you got a lot going on. You're kind of like mom and dad right now in the whole scenario. Make sure you have the GoFundMe page, folks. And by the way, Derrick likes, I love you and thank you just as much as anything else, just to show that you're supporting his family. So comes down to that as well, and friendships and also.
Amen. We
thank you so much, Derrick. And I'm praying for your wife and your family. You're a man of God. And I think the world of you, know that. Thank you so much for spending the time with us, and we really appreciate it.
Likewise, my brother. And thank you for having me on. Anytime you call me, brother, I'm a phone call away.
Always, man. He's always kind to me. Thank you, Derrick. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Be good, brother.
You got it. Please hit the like button. We thank you guys so much. That was awesome having Derrick Gunn on with us. And make sure you go to that GoFundMe page. I want to thank Xander, Big Joe, and I want to thank my guy, Tone. Fantastic job. Tone, absolutely kicking ass. Tomorrow, 2 to 6. And we shall see you on the flip side.
Football and